Welcome to Insights for Manufacturing, the podcast that supports the UK manufacturing sector. Hosted by Jeff Beecham, the manufacturer's recruiter. Hello and welcome to Insights for Manufacturing. Today we're discussing one of the key threats to UK manufacturing, and that's cyber attacks. I'm delighted to welcome my guest today, Chris Windley, who's the Chairman and CEO of the Cyber Security Association in the UK. Welcome to the show, Chris. How are you?
Thanks, Jeff. I'm fine. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
You're very, very welcome. Now, Chris, as we've discussed in a conversation we had a week or so ago, this is a topic that I'm aware of, and I know it's really important to all businesses, individuals, government departments, public service, whatever, but it's not an area of my expertise. So I thought it would be really good for us to have a chat about cybersecurity on Insights for Manufacturing, because it seems that a lot of manufacturing businesses have gone by the way of IoT, Internet of Things, machine learning, and all of these, connected systems. So it's becoming more and more important for businesses to safeguard their intellectual property, data, and everything else. So just before I start with the sort of interview, if you like, I've been having a look at some of the stats from the Cybersecurity Association website. I'm just going to quote some of these now for the listeners, because these really are quite eye-opening. So over 65% of detected attacks, 25% of large firms experience a breach at least once a month. Only 13% of all businesses set cyber security standards for their suppliers.
Yep.
And only 29% have written a formal written cyber security policy to protect their business. And then 51% took recommended action to identify risks from cyber attacks. I mean, that's just staggering, and just shows I suppose, the acuteness of the problem and the threat to all businesses.
Yeah, it is. I remember going to a presentation actually by a cyber insurance company about something like 3 years ago in Malvern. And at that time, the guy was actually predicting global losses from cyber attacks would reach 7 trillion by 2023, he said. So we're pretty well on track for that, sadly. And in terms of manufacturing, the attacks on manufacturing have just become like the top area that's being attacked, right? So it sort of was financial services and insurance, but there's been, a 2,000% increase in attacks, and manufacturing has hit the #1 spot. So basically, the hackers have got their eye on the manufacturing sector.
So to begin with, tell us about the Cyber Security Association, first of all, Chris. What does it do? Who does it support?
So the Cybersecurity Association, its aim really is to promote cybersecurity. And in particular, we promote the government standard, if you like, of cybersecurity. We believe that there is a government standard that has been created and should be used, but not enough people know about it. And that is the Cyber Essentials Standard, which we'll talk more about later on. There's actually a number of relatively simple things that you can do that will stop most cyber attacks. Another part of the Cybersecurity Association, I think I've got a military background, so I'm ex-Royal Navy Weapons Engineer Officer, right? Another part of it is really to help support people that are coming from a military or other services background, say police or something like that, and want to get into cybersecurity, right? And they don't know how to do that. And actually, again, we're very lucky in the UK because there's been a lot of work done, to even train up people that have non-IT and non-cyber backgrounds, to become cybersecurity specialists and that. So that's an important area. For me, it goes with like the what's it, the Armed Forces Covenant and that type of idea, basically helping people from the military transition in particular into a cybersecurity environment, and obviously, military people understand this, like threat, attack, defend, and all of that, so they're very suited to this world that we're living in now.
Brilliant. Well, where are we then, Chris, in terms of our current state of cybersecurity readiness in the UK in general?
Well, I always like to point out, right, so something that people don't really know, or don't, they're just not aware of, and that, right, and that is probably that the UK, and there are particular areas of the UK as well that are very advanced, right, but the UK in general is very advanced in its like cybersecurity defense. It's also advanced in cybersecurity attacking as well. About 2 years ago, Gchq like formed an offensive cyber attack team. Where, people might like to know, that this place, Gchq, exists, the Government Communications Headquarters. So people in Cheltenham know the donut, right? They might not know what's going on in the donut. And actually, it's not just people in Cheltenham, because people down in Cornwall, they know about the Gchq listening station down there. People in London know about Gchq and the MI5, MI6 building down there. There's it's publicly known that there's a Gchq office in the centre of Manchester now. So there are quite a few people that sort of like know about it. But what they probably don't realise is that all the time, Gchq and the National Cybersecurity Centre, which is basically the public-facing arm of Gchq, all the time they are gathering information on the types of attacks that we're seeing, and where those attacks are coming from, and they're looking forward as to how we can defend against those attacks. And so they do all sorts of things, to help defend. One of them was the fact, again, I'll mention it, that they put this Cyber Essential standard in place. So that basically comes from Gchq, NCSC, with an organisation called IASME, Information Assurance for Small Medium Enterprises, right? Who run that scheme, right? But it comes from there. And also, people might like to know, that there is this thing called the Gchq NCSC Cyber Accelerator, where they every year they take in a cohort of 10 companies who they think can help with the cyber attacks that they're seeing, right? So that is the key, right? Is they take that, every year they take 10 companies in who themselves, have got an innovative idea that Gchq and NCSC thinks fits with the threats that are being seen. I can tell you now that the current cohort is very focused on like ransomware and malvertising, because that's seen as one of the key threat areas at the minute.
So we're in a pretty good place, but I guess lots more work to be done, and it's an ever shifting enemy, isn't it? It's morphing into different guises all the time. New forms of attack are coming out into the world all the time. So it's trying to be one step ahead, but I guess the businesses coming up with these cybersecurity solutions have to be reactive as well as preventative as well. That's just the nature of the beast. Is that right?
Certainly, like in general, we're sort of following what's basically the anti-terrorism type of structure, right? Which is sort of prevent, protect, etc., right? Which is which the police will talk about a lot. So we certainly want to prevent things happening rather than allow things to happen, right? And then help people to defend against it. I think that's pretty obvious, isn't it? That's what we want to happen, right? So we're looking at all of these different ways that we can prevent the hackers getting in. What can we do to help stop that happening? And there are various things, and again, I would say that a lot of them are fairly basic things, right? But people just don't know about those basic things. The situation is that you've got very clever people that are well funded, who for whatever reason decide to be on the dark side. So if you think, right, if we go with, like, say, next year somebody is getting $7 trillion, whatever it is, right? Obviously it's a lot of, like, organized crime type people and that, but individuals as well, are, like, basically sharing this $7 trillion pot, if you like, right? So that is an awful lot of money that's basically available for them to hire the best talent, and to do, like, the best research and that and to have the best equipment, right? So one of the things that we basically always try and get across, because exactly what I mean, where a lot of people just think they're not going to hack me, that I'm too small to be hacked, right? And that is a very common, like, view. The problem is, right, is what they don't realize is that a lot of it is automated these days, right? What we call bots, or software robots, that are basically just operating automatically, and they're looking for a hole wherever they can find a hole, right? And then when they find a hole, then they're going to exploit that. There's a combination of, like, automated and manual, if you like, work going on in terms of targeting, and in terms of, like, how the attack is actually affected. But that it's a really key point just to get across to people, that it's pretty random. Obviously there are situations where you've got, like, people working for governments, the Russians or the Chinese or whoever it is, right? And they are targeting, particular things. Yeah. Obviously manufacturing, particularly in the defense industry, is like a fantastic target for them, particularly now, if they can, like, get, I don't know, part of the plans of a missile system or something like that, this is, like, very valuable at this moment in time, and but equally it's true of, say, for example, intellectual property in the film industry or in the music industry, and that they get hacked as well, and in the fashion industry, actually, they get hacked as well, for, like, the latest films or the latest fashions or whatever, because all of that again is valuable to somebody. I think what we're going to try and do here, Jeff, is give people key takeaways, and a key takeaway for the manufacturing sector, and particularly the manufacturing SME sector, is the most attacked sector. The attacks in general are random, so anybody could be attacked.
Could you help our audience with a few golden nuggets of value? What are the myths around cybersecurity that are relevant to, or more relevant to manufacturing, Chris?
Well, that myth that we just talked about, I'm just an SME, or I'm just an SME manufacturer, if you like. They're not going to attack me. That is, like, a really big myth, if you like. Yeah. Another myth, if you like, that I want to highlight, right, is it's, like, too difficult and too complicated. Okay. Right? Because I know it seems like that. I was talking with one of our partners the other day, and he was stood on a stand somewhere, and in a cybersecurity show, and a person walked past, and they looked at what he had on his backboards and that, and they went, ugh, cybersecurity, and like, walk straight on, right? And you understand, if you like, that's how a lot of people feel, particularly in the SME space, right? About it, about its complexity, if you like, and maybe about its irrelevance as well. And one of the things that I talk about is to say, look, right, of course, this is about cybersecurity, but it's also about getting a grip on your IT infrastructure. Well, obviously, in manufacturing, that's IT and OT infrastructure, yep. Right? Yep. Yeah. But is getting a fundamental handle, right, on what is going on actually on your network, right? And that's just like, it's like basic stuff, right? But it's basic stuff that people struggle to answer, but actually we've got easy solutions to it. Say, for example, if I go to you or somebody and I say, I don't know, let's say you've got like, I don't know, 10 or 20 man company or something like that. And I go to you and I say, okay, give me a list of all the devices that you've got on your network. Typically, they will not be able to do it.
Small businesses won't even have an asset register.
They don't have, an asset register. They certainly are not going to know in real time what devices are actually on their network, right? But, we have easy solutions for that, right? So, and of course, it's like fundamentally important to understand that. By the way, it's probably just interesting for me to say to you that the record that we've seen in a home, right, for the number of devices in a home was 76 devices. Yeah. Now, and people can't believe that. That's just it was an ordinary, basically 4-person family, and they had, when we installed our sensor into their home, we discovered 76 devices attached to their network, right? And the thing that people do typically, I have a bit of fun with people, that is like, they'll do the calculation. They'll go, oh, okay, I've got a PC, I've got an iPad, and I've got a mobile phone. That's 3, and there's 4 of us. So 4 times 3, that's 12. But what they forget is that these days, you've got Wi-Fi speakers, you've got Alexa devices. Now, I'm smiling, right, because I had this conversation 2 days ago where I was saying to this guy, 76, right, and he said, "Oh, I think I've got about 200." And I said, "Well," I said, "Well, okay." I said, "Well, we haven't got a solution, installed into his house. But if we did have, he would definitely take the record, right?" And that that just shows you. I mean, he is, the other guy was a techie as well, right? And he had 76 devices, and this guy's, he's got like literally everything wired up onto his network, So obviously, if you think, okay, blimey, there's 76 devices in a house, how many is there going to be in a business? It's a scary number, Jeff, to sort of like relate it into manufacturing, right? As we've talked about, you have got, like, in manufacturing, you sort of got like an IT environment, the front office, and then you've got an OT environment, the back office. What we see is that manufacturers split those into sort of 2 networks. Not always, though. Sometimes they're all on the same network. Yeah. And so the problem is that with like the OT, IoT type devices and that, they're sort of like, they're built to be low cost, and often, you can infect them with a virus, but you can't patch them, and you can't put like an endpoint agent on them to monitor what is going on. But that is the problem, if you like. We can see what's going on a PC and a laptop and a mobile phone and things like that fairly easily. It's more difficult to sort of see exactly what's going on with some of the IoT type devices and that. So going back to what I said at the beginning, finding out what you've got on your network is a really great starting point. you know more about manufacturing than I do, you know, but what is happening in, of course, in most businesses post-pandemic, Jeff, right, is that, of course, during the pandemic, I mean, not obviously not everybody in manufacturing, but you know, almost everybody was working from home. But now it's very much a combination of sometimes people are at home, sometimes they're in the office, and sometimes they are, you know, out and about. You know, you'll be like, you know, meet people in a hotel or on a train or whatever that is. From a cybersecurity perspective, it's absolutely the worst case. Plus, if you add to that, a lot of what happens, I think you'll agree with me now, is that, you know, we get sort of like temporary and part-time workers who use their own equipment, so their own laptop and their own mobile phone, and you know, they come and sit in your office and they connect to your network. and you know, this is a real challenge for us, right? So like, I'm a massive fan of flexible working. I've been working from home, you know, for like more than 20 years. So I'm, you know, I want people to be able to work where they want to, but from a cybersecurity perspective, it's very, very challenging, you know.
I guess many of the large corporates, Chris, will have established cybersecurity teams, but
Yeah.
for, you know, a lot of UK manufacturers, many of which are going to be SMEs, you know, sometimes with even minimal IT or digital support to begin with, you know, what basic steps do they need to take to protect their business?
Well, again, I mean, I'm just going to say, right, that within the Cyber Essentials standard, that there are sort of like 5 areas to address in that standard. And so even if people were to look at the standard, and there's all sorts of tools available, right? You know, so there's basically like an online Cyber Essentials readiness guide. So you haven't even got Cyber Essentials, but you can walk yourself through this Cyber Essentials readiness guide. It's free, right? It's online on the IASME site. So you can walk yourself through this questionnaire, which will ask you the right questions about, you know, in relation to these 5, as we call them, control areas of Cyber Essentials. Interestingly enough, so like basically, even if they did that, even if they just like went and looked at what are the 5 control areas of Cyber Essentials, right? And they're simple things like, you know, do you have a firewall set up or not properly? You know, what is your password management situation? What is your access control? You know, have you got protection against malware? Simple things like that, right? And simple questions of that you could just go and look at and say, okay, right then, well, I need to have a bit of a look at these areas, and that's going to help. And just to give you an interesting report came out recently whereby cybersecurity academics from Oxford, Lancaster, Bristol University and King's College London, right? They basically, put simply, they set up SME networks for different verticals, you know, manufacturing, retail, finance, you know, what you would, a typical networks and that. And then they basically, and they set them up to the Cyber Essential standard. And then they attacked them with everything that they had, Jeff, and could think of, right? And it was, you know, the really great news was that it stopped like high 90% of the attacks, right? And this is this is really the message that we want to get across, right? That just by paying attention to these 5 control areas, you can stop like most of the typical cyber attacks that you will come across.
So just for the audience's benefit, then the free walkthrough that you mentioned earlier for Cyber Essentials is on which website? Can you just give the website?
It's on the IASME website, IASME website, right? And so IASME is the accreditation body. They're the people that own the Cyber Essentials scheme, and they report to GCHQ and NCSC, right? And like downstream of them, there are currently around 260 what they call cyber essentials certification bodies. That online questionnaire is on the IASME website. Yes, so we can let people know about that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just wondering, Chris, what kind of grant funding is available for manufacturers or other businesses, in fact, to invest in safeguarding their businesses better? Is there any help available? Because obviously, these things cost money. I know there are some free things that you can do, but to actually, heighten and optimize your cybersecurity, at some point it's going to cost money. If you're a larger business, that could be quite expensive. Is there any funding available for organizations?
Well, let's first of all just help people understand, right? I mean, I've already pointed them to like a one free resource, and there are other free resources, right? I would definitely encourage people to ignore all of the different flavors of cybersecurity opinion. So manufacturers in particular, they probably need to get cyber essentials if they're dealing with the government or if they're dealing with defense, right? I was speaking last night to a chief technical officer, they own a number of manufacturing businesses, and they're putting them all through Cyber Essentials Plus. And the reason that they're doing that is because they want that there are some contracts that they want to be able to bid for and hopefully win, and they cannot do that unless they have got in their case Cyber Essentials Plus, right? So I don't know what they manufacture, but say if they were manufacturing parts again for I don't know, an aeroplane or a missile system or something like that, right? Or they were manufacturing something for the government, right? Because the government wants all of its supply chains secured, and it wants them secured to the Cyber Essential standard, right? That's a good reason to me in itself, Jeff. I hope you'd agree, right? To focus on that standard in particular. Even if you have not achieved certification, if you've begun on that process, then you're going in the right direction. What we call like the cyber hygiene journey, if you like, right?
Yeah, it's best practice, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's best practice, right? But always, and sorry, I know I keep repeating this, right? But it's best practice to the government standard. Again, for us here, Jeff, in the Midlands, where obviously they're building HS2. If you want to be, I don't know if it's all types, but certainly a lot of types of subcontractor for HS2. Again, you have to have cyber essentials. I think that's important to remember. And then the other thing to remember is that actually we're not talking about a lot of money here, right? They're sort of like at the small end to get cyber essentials. The basic certification is £300, right? To install our Lujab online solution, you're talking a couple of £100, right? With maybe £100 a month if you decide to take basically all of our remote support and virtual cybersecurity expert stuff, right? So you're not talking about a huge amount of money. I'm sure in manufacturing any amount of money is important, right? But
versus the risks, it's I guess it's a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it? It's a drop in the ocean compared to what it would cost if things went pear-shaped.
Honestly, it really is, right? And obviously, I am, and as you can clearly tell, an evangelist, for the Cyber Essentials system. And the more people that go through that process and the lower cost things become as well, because people are building for much larger scale. There is still, I don't know, I'm not an expert on this area, but there is still some funding around, I believe, right, which was a bit more generic than Cyber Essentials. Yeah, it was basically like about improving your information technology infrastructure and stuff like that, right? So there may be something like that, the equivalent of like the broadband certificate. Have you heard of that?
Heard of it, but I don't know what it is.
No, well, it's basically a voucher. You know, it's a voucher from the government, right, for businesses to install broadband, to help businesses install broadband, right? And so that is what we really could do with for Cyber Essentials as well. And there have been parts of the country that have gone into that area, right? So Scotland had was offering like 1,000 Cyber Essential vouchers for a while. Not now. Leicestershire again had a similar scheme, and the Channel Islands and the Isle of Man again similar schemes, right? Well, you know, there you've got. I'm really not sure why Leicester decided to do it. I'm glad they did, right? But there, you know, there is a lot of support from the police on cybersecurity in the Leicester area, yeah. But you know, like the Channel Islands and Isle of Man, obviously they've got a lot of financial institutions in there, right? So obviously getting people cyber secure there was very important to all of them, yeah. And Scotland and Wales have been, you know, pioneers in cybersecurity, you know, very similar to the area around Cheltenham, you know, the West Midlands area, yeah. So I guess I'd have to admit, right, that I am not aware of any specific funding to get Cyber Essentials, right? But what I will tell you is that we, the cybersecurity association we're working with, right? You know, we have various incentive schemes to get people on the path, right? So they can, you know, now I mean I've already given you an indication of the cost. So if we have incentive schemes, you know, it's going to sort of improve that.
To be honest, it's, you know, the costs that you've mentioned just seem really, they're not insignificant, but they just seem very, very, very low compared to what I imagined. And that, again, that just shows my ignorance to these things. But, you know, for manufacturing businesses, maybe looking at this and thinking, oh crikey, how much is it going to cost? It's not an awful lot at all, is it?
It really isn't. It really isn't, Jeff. You know, and so there's a couple of challenges here, right? You know, I'll just give you an example. A couple of years ago, I'm not going to remember the name of it now. I think it was something like the Association of Retailers or something like that. I was speaking at this event, right? And with me was somebody from GCHQ and NCSC, right? And it was basically directors of retail organizations that, you know, that were not like the big chains, Tesco, Sainsbury's and all the rest of it. So everybody other than them, basically. And, you know, so we basically stood up and said, okay, who's heard of GCHQ, NCSC, and who's heard of Cyber Essentials? Not one out of a 200 audience. So, you know, this is a big challenge that we have, and I'm grateful, you know, Jeff, for the opportunity to talk about it here. Is to get the word out, if you like, about Cyber Essentials to people generally, and to get the word out that it's pretty easy to do and it's pretty low cost, right? So, like you say, why wouldn't you? What I like to encourage people to understand is that, again, you would know more about this than I do, but you know that I sort of know about the machine tool area a bit from my past. You know, in the same way that they have put a lot of effort, right, into, you know, improving production methods, the efficiency, etc., right? That's what we're really talking about on the IT and the cybersecurity side. We're just talking about putting a bit of effort, like there, to, you know, to improve those systems a bit. You know, and a bit will mean an awful lot to the, you know, UK generally,
Well, thank you very much for sharing that, Chris. I mean, it's a fascinating topic. I was going to ask you about your involvement with LUJAM, just finally, because aside from your sort of role as chairman and CEO of the Cyber Security Association, you're also global sales and marketing director for LUJAM. So can you just briefly tell us about LUJAM, what it is that they do, and how can they specifically help UK manufacturers?
Okay, well, I can let me thank you, and let me just relate it to some of the things that I've said, right? So LUJAM Cyber spent 2 years in the GCHQ NCSC Cyber Accelerator that I talked about earlier, right? And so that was about 5 years ago. We did our 2 years in there. So pre the pandemic. Now this shows you how forward-looking the government and GCHQ and NCSC are. So we basically went in there with a solution that we had in mind, right? Which was, to put it very simply, it was about blocking bad IP addresses, blocking basically the hackers, right? Because basically the government has a list of all of the bad IP addresses, right? And it also tracks what we call zero-day addresses as well, which is ones that have just appeared and we don't know whether they're good or bad, right? Okay, so basically we went in there with that innovation, and what they asked us to do was they were basically saying, okay, Cyber Essentials is great. That they basically came up with Cyber Essentials in 2014, right? It's been going that long, right? So Cyber Essentials is great, right? But the idea of an annual recertification, has its limits when you've got basically cyber attackers attacking you every day, right? So they basically said to us, can you produce for us, right, something that continuously evaluates a home or a business against the Cyber Essentials standard, right? So so effectively that's like doing an audit, a Cyber Essentials audit every single day. Right?
That's in real time.
It's in real time, right? Now, and so very much right. And as I say, pre-pandemic, what they could see happening was they could see more and more people working from home, and of course they could see more and more SMEs, right? Small, medium-sized business sector is growing all the time, isn't it? Right. So they're projecting forward and they're going, okay, we have to somehow protect those people. Yeah. Again, because they're part of the national supply chain, right? At the end of the day. Yeah. So we have 99%.
To protect.
Yeah, exactly.
They're the backbone of the country, aren't they? 99%.
Exactly. So now I can tell you, right, that the criteria that they gave to us, right, they basically said, right, guys, we need you to make this very effective, right? We need you to make it simple to use, and we need you to make it low cost, affordable as well, right? Otherwise, they know, and I know, right? SMEs are not going to buy it, right? If it's too complicated, if it's too expensive, that it doesn't matter how effective it is, they're not going to buy it, right? So that is basically what they had us produce, and so as you know now, we've now had basically 3 years or so, if you like, of production. We've put some 300 odd networks out there. And I think it's important to note as well that in amongst the time when we were in GCHQ NCSC Cyber Accelerator, we spoke to the very senior IT directors and the CISOs, the Cyber Information Security Officers, right, about what did they need for the manufacturing, the defense, if you like, supply chains. So I won't necessarily go into that in detail, but basically to say that we took this basic idea of continuous monitoring and vulnerability scanning, as we call it, every day. We took that to them and they said, this is brilliant, right? The only thing that they actually said to us, really, it wasn't negative. It was just that they said, what you're doing is probably too much information for us, guys, right? We don't need all that. We just need to know, is that company in our supply chain secure or not secure, right? And also they said, you must not be too intrusive, Chris, right? In other words, we don't want you to snoop on people's business, right? Yeah, right. So what I can tell you is, this is a bit of a technical term, right? But we don't do what they call deep pack inspection. So the easy way to understand that is that we know who's talking to who, but we don't know what they're saying, right? So like, we know when there's somebody on a PC and they're talking to Facebook, and they might be talking to a friend on Facebook, or they might be talking to a colleague or something, right? We don't know what they're saying. All we know is they're on Facebook, right? Which in itself, again, that's a higher level of information that we provide above, like just how many devices are there. We provide information on who are those devices talking to, what applications are those devices using, where are they storing their data, and all that type of thing, which is of course important for GDPR as well as it is for cybersecurity, right? And I think you'd agree with me, Jeff. It's generally important for compliance and governance and risk assessment generally. One of the things I think that all cybersecurity suppliers in the world suffer from, right, is how to communicate with SMEs to get them to take action. Opportunities like this are brilliant, and that, for us to just like come on and go, hey, this is not as scary or as expensive or as complicated as you think, right? Anybody can basically do, this. So because of that, right, I will do a lot of experimenting with messaging. Yeah. I'm sure you've done the same. What actually gets people's interest and gets them to take action. Yeah.
Marketing approach, isn't it? Really.
Exactly.
Test and monitor.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's a standard digital marketing approach of like A/B, analysis, as they call it, isn't it? And so, and of course you came from this. We met from this. That we as a company are having a lot of success in communicating with people using social media and using like virtual networking, online networking events. So I and other members of the team, we just drop into virtual networking events, and we just talk to people in plain English about cybersecurity and try and get them to understand it's not that scary. So there are different messages. Sometimes I talk about like a cybersecurity center in a box, because now, like at a higher level, right? If I said SOC to people, people know that's a security operations center, but you probably didn't, and SMEs are not. Cybersecurity center in a box, sort of like, just about hits the spot. And also, I think if I said to you virtual cybersecurity experts as well, right? So, people are sort of a bit, familiar with like fractional directors and fractional cybersecurity officers and stuff like that, or part-time. That's basically what that is.
It's as and when you need it, isn't it?
As and when you need it, right? And so that's basically what we're saying. And what we've done is like we've made our solution so that it could. So first of all, it can be operated by non-IT, non-cyber people within a business, right? It could be operated by the managing director. It could be operated by the office manager. It could be, you don't need to be IT or cyber, right? And then at the same time, providing that we're given access, right, we can see the results from the portal, from the results from the daily analysis, right? So when I say we, I mean Lujam Cyber, and our partners can see that, who are the cyber experts, you know, typically these cyber essential certification bodies, right? So we can all work as a virtual team.
Yep.
Yeah. On you know, if you like, on shall we call it the cybersecurity problem? I don't know. There are no problems, only opportunities, aren't there? But
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But you know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks for giving that overview of LuJam Cyber. That's LUJAM for anybody listening. LuJam Cyber. That's pretty much taken us to the end of this particular episode. It's been a fantastic conversation with you, Chris. Some really eye-opening stuff, certainly from my point of view. And I'm sure there's some real value-added nuggets in today's episode for our manufacturing audience. So thank you very much, Chris Windley, for coming along today. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and look out for the next episode of Insights for Manufacturing. See you next time, and bye-bye.